This being Palm Sunday, our text for today is probably the most used text across Christianity for this Sunday around the world. It's the story of the entry of Jesus into Jerusalem on the last week of his life before his crucifixion. So we'll read it from Matthew's account, chapter 21, beginning with verse 1 and going through verse 11. Now when they drew near Jerusalem and came to Bethphage at the Mount of Olives, then Jesus sent 2 disciples, saying to them, "Go into the village opposite you, and immediately you will find a donkey tied and a colt with her. Loose them and bring them to me. And if anyone says anything to you, you shall say, 'The Lord has need of them,' and immediately he will send them." All this was done that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophet, saying, "Tell the daughter of Zion, behold, your king is coming to you, lowly and sitting on a donkey, a colt, the foal of a donkey." So the disciples went and did as Jesus commanded them. They brought the donkey and the colt, laid their clothes on them, and set him on them. And a very great multitude spread their clothes on the road. Others cut down branches from the trees and spread them on the road. Then the multitudes who went before and those who followed cried out, saying, "Hosanna to the Son of David! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord! Hosanna in the highest!" And when he had come into Jerusalem, all the city was moved, saying, "Who is this?" So the multitude said, "This is Jesus, the prophet from Nazareth of Galilee." And may the Lord add his blessing to the reading of his word today. Back in 1859, Charles Dickens wrote a novel entitled A Tale of Two Cities. That novel did pretty well. In fact, it is one of the biggest selling novels ever written by any person of any time. The novel basically described 2 cities, Paris and London. And we're not talking about Paris, Tennessee or London, Kentucky. No, we're talking about the other Paris and the other London. And in these 2 cities, Dickens described how different it was for those who were rich and for those who were poor. And to introduce the differences, Dickens began his novel with these unforgettable words. And I want to quote them to you. You've heard them many times. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. It had everything. It had nothing. Some were going to heaven. Some were going to hell. Unquote. I thought of the title of that novel and those words because it describes the city of Jerusalem during the last week before the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. That is, Jerusalem was one kind of city on that Sunday and a completely different kind of city on that Friday. On Sunday, it was the best of times for the city of Jerusalem, but on that Friday, it was the worst of times. Let me show you some of the many ways in which this was true. First of all, this was true of the commencement. The week commenced on that Sunday with Jesus riding into the city on the back of a donkey. But on Friday, in that same city, Jesus wasn't riding. He was walking. On that Friday, in that same city, he wasn't being carried by an animal. No, on that Friday, he was carrying a load as if he was the animal. And of course, he was carrying the cross on which he was about to die. So how different? The best of times, Jesus riding on a donkey. The worst of times, Jesus walking under a cross. Secondly, we note the difference in terms of clothing. On that Sunday, the people took off their clothes. Now, don't get the wrong idea there. They didn't take them all off, okay? They took off their outer garments and they spread them on the road for Jesus to ride on. But on Friday, in that same city, the people did take off all the clothes of Jesus Christ, so they could beat his naked body to a bloody pulp. On Friday, in that same city, while he hung up on the cross, naked, they hauled out their dice and gambled for the clothes off his back. What a change. The best of times, their clothes under him. The worst of times, his clothes off of him. And then the third difference we note is in the cutting. On that Sunday, the people cut palm branches off of trees and spread them down on the road for Jesus to ride on. But on Friday, in that same city, the people cut down another tree, a tree for Jesus to hang and bleed and die on. What a difference. The best of times, Jesus riding on the branches of a tree. The worst of times, Jesus hanging on a bloody tree. And then the next difference is one that we hear. They're chanting. On that Sunday, the people chanted and shouted at Jesus, "Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest." But on Friday, in that same city, listen to what they chanted and shouted to him. He's guilty of blasphemy. He's deserving of death. Give us Barabbas. Crucify Jesus. Let his blood be on us and our children. If you are the Christ, come down from the cross. Look at you. You say you can save us. You can't even save yourself. What a different song they sang. The best of times, crown him as Lord. The worst of times, crucify him as a liar. And then we note the different conclusion. On that Sunday when the parade ended, Jesus went into the temple there in the city. But on that Friday, in that same city, Jesus went into a tomb. What a change. The best of times, Jesus in the temple. The worst of times, Jesus in the tomb. Yes, Jerusalem during that last week was decidedly and definitely a tale of two cities. A city that started out at its very best, but a city that ended up at its very worst. Now let me ask you this morning, what about your city? And I'm not talking about Puryear, or Hazel, or Murray, or Paris, or anywhere else around or in between. I'm talking about your city. I'm talking about your life, where you live. I'm going to borrow the words of Mr. Dickens. I'm sure he didn't mean them for a sermon, but I'm going to borrow them once again. I want to ask you, is it the best or is it the worst of your times? Is it your age of wisdom or is it your age of foolishness? Is it your season of light or is it your season of darkness? Is it your spring of hope or is it your winter of despair? Do you have everything or do you have nothing? And last but not least, are you going to heaven or are you going to hell? The answer to each of those questions depends and rests on what you do with one person. the carpenter from Nazareth, Jesus Christ. He answers all those questions. So the question to you is, will you treat him the way they did on Sunday? Or will you treat him the way they did on Friday? Which city is your city? The best of times or the worst of times? Think about that.